There's been some confusion about our legal requirements, and I just wanted to review a few of those and then add some comment as well. The Occupational Health and Safety Act applies to every workplace in Ontario. And Section 1 of that act has a definition that I'll read as soon as I can bring it up of a workplace. I appreciate Mr. Wood's definition, but the act provides its own definition, and that's the one we have to follow in this case. A workplace means any land, premises, location, or thing at, upon, in, or near which a worker works. And essentially what that means is if someone is required to be somewhere as a condition of their employment, that somewhere is a workplace. We require certain staff members to be in this council chamber during council meetings. It is a condition of their employment that they be in this room. Therefore, this room is a workplace. It is also a public forum, but it is certainly a workplace. Section 32 of the Act requires that we have policies to protect our workers. I forget the subsections, I could look them up. One of them does deal with violence in the workplace. The other deals with harassment in the workplace. So that act makes a distinction between the two. Both we have to protect our staff from. And we have no authority to change the requirement to have that policy. It's provincial legislation. We can't override provincial legislation. The only way for us to not have a policy would be to have a court order saying that we're not required to have one, or to have an act of the legislature saying we don't require a policy. Now, I've heard people refer to the Bracken case as standing for the proposition that the Act only applies to workers. And I think that's a misinterpretation of that case. And I understand because the Court of Appeal doesn't really give a fulsome explanation of why the Act doesn't apply. They do refer to precedent, an earlier Court of Appeal case, which is Rainy River Town and Wilson. The citation, I believe, is 2017 ONCA 605. And to understand the law, you have to read both those cases. In the Olson case, the Court of Appeal says that the Act does not apply to Mr. Olson because he's not a worker and because his offensive behavior did not occur in the workplace. The court in Bracken follows that logic, and they say the Act doesn't apply to Mr. Bracken because he's not a worker. They don't, unfortunately, go any further, but it is also not applicable because his actions did not take place in a workplace. Our respectful workplace policy applies to everyone in this workplace. The comment I have, I'm confused a little bit by some of the flag around this. I don't know why it's so challenging to have to be respectful of people. You know, we hear from a great many delegates in this room, and not everybody agrees with everything we say. And those people manage to work within our policy. They're able to come into this room, they challenge us, they question the decisions of council, but they do it in a way that doesn't disrespect anyone. And I can't fathom why that's such a high burden. Now, I've heard the comments too that, our staff are being too sensitive. These are just words, they're just comment. And I gotta say, that reminds me a lot of what women used to face when they were entering male-dominated workplaces. And I'm thinking of speech like locker room banter that some guys engage in. And when women complained that that speech was offensive, they were often met with things like, oh, don't be so sensitive. We were just joking. Those comments are offensive. And that kind of response, I'm a little disappointed. I had hoped as a society we kind of move beyond that. When you know better, you do better. The last comment I want to make is in response to the allegations that we're using this policy to stifle dissent. And that's just not true. Every delegate who comes before this council, in order to be heard, requires that we pass a motion to hear them. If we didn't want to hear from people, we would fail to pass the motion. In my 2 years on council, every single delegate who's been up here and asked to speak to us has received unanimous support for the motion to hear them. I tell everyone, we want to hear from you. We want you to come in here and challenge us and help us make a better community. The one requirement we have is we ask you to be respectful of other people. I don't think that's too much to ask. So I cannot support the suspension of the policy because doing so would willfully put us in violation of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. That act comes with a penalty of up to $2 million. I cannot do that. So I think it would be a breach of our legal obligations to support this motion to suspend. Now, the other part of the motion to be voted on separately, review, I think is a very fair request. I'm in support of reviewing policy. I think it's something we should engage in regularly. I would like to see a review put onto the agenda. I don't know that it needs a higher priority than other things. It should go into the queue, in my opinion, and we get to it as we work down the list. We've already spent a lot of time distracted by this issue, and we have a lot of other work to do on council. And my concern is that we need to get that work done. So I would not put a high priority on this review. It should be on the list, just not at the top.